the walk out of me before, but not when
He was being so
he was
charming.
so charming.
Video streaming at housefarms.com.
I don't care for you if a putrid sludge you're troweling out.
Puss-faced little pimp stick.
True progressive talk.
Might be a good time for you guys to give up.
Welcome back. Philip Ittner joins us for hour 2 today. Very exciting. Glad to have him here. How you doing, sir?
Good, thank you. Lovely
Excellent.
day, thank you.
All right on.
Beautiful, sunny spring day. So,
Well, that's it brings us to the possibility of the spring offensive, which I think is
offensive. That's right.
yes. And one of the stories that I was reading a commentary in the Telegraph that this was the title was Ukraine can take Crimea within months if we let it. There is no need for a diplomatic solution. Russia's war could soon be brought to a humiliating end. This is Ben Hodges writing this. Yeah.
I love General Hodges. I truly do. He's an amazing American officer, and I hope he's right. I hope he's right. He is he's very supportive of Ukraine.
Mhm.
I genuinely hope he's right. I think Crimea is problematic. Look, we're going to have to wait to see what happens when the offensive starts, and we're going to have to see how the Russians respond. And we're going to have to see, how well the Ukrainians have planned this out. I mean, judging by their last offensive where they took Kherson and Kharkiv back,
Right.
there's a high possibility they might be able to make
Right. The
real significant gains.
But
And it
his-
also
he-
depends on, the morale and the organization of Russian troops. But
Right.
Ben Hodges, I've known Ben Hodges for, easily 20 years,
Right.
and he is an interesting fella.
Well, curiously
And I
enough,
hope he's
he has a 3-point plan to take Crimea. This is he goes he pushed the first task, isolating Crimea. Achieved imminently with the success of a Ukrainian offensive beginning in the summer. Kiev's forces can easily break the Russian-occupied land bridge. The second task is to make Crimea untenable for Russian forces. This can be done with long-range precision missiles provided by the West, targeting Sevastopol Navy Base and the dozen other so bases, places like Saki, and the logistics hub at Jankoy, and the main Russian headquarters at Henichesk. Yeah. The final task would be to liberate Crimea itself, occupy the peninsula, and complete the destruction of the Kerch Bridge connecting it to Russia. This is his basically strangle, squeeze, and cut off. And they're basically treat the Russians that are in Crimea like a tumor. You basically tie off the ends of it and let it die naturally and shrink, and then make sure that there's no pathway for it to regrow.
Yeah, I mean, I might be repeating myself here, and forgive me if I am for those who have followed along with us for the last 14 months.
Mm-hmm.
Much of the reason for this war is because Crimea is it is not independently sustainable, and the Russians have a major military base there. It's one of the base of one of their. A full quarter of their navy is based out of Sevastopol on the peninsula. The Crimean Peninsula cannot be maintained or sustained without outside help. Mostly it's fresh water, and so that's the reason why. A primary reason. There's no one single reason for this war, but there's a huge part of this war is maintaining Crimea. So the Russians have wanted to get a strip of land from mainland Russia going down along the coastline and connecting with the Crimean Peninsula so that they can deliver food and water and all that stuff and resupply their naval ships and all that kind of stuff. And the bridge is not sufficient. The bridge is not going to do it. So Hodges is right. That if you cut off the land bridge, Crimea will not be sustainable.
Right.
And you can like an old style siege, you can let them run out of food and water and get to a point of desperation where it's a negotiating point, or well, I mean, look, we don't know what that kind of
Right.
scenario is going to look like, but you can easily cut off Crimea.
hmm
Hodges
This
is right there.
and
Now, the big question is how that's going to roll out, how that's
sure.
going to happen. So
Well, I mean, I've said
easier
for
said than done.
I've said that there's a strategic belief in Russia that Crimea gets lost if they bifurcate the Donbass anyway. So that's why fighting in Bakhmut has become such a thing, because if that gets split into two, the southern part of it falls faster than the northern part because of its connection to Russia and Belarus. And so and then Crimea is next, and they kind of know that, so they're trying to keep that whole thing together, but they don't have the resources to do it, and they're just spending ammo and human lives doing it. The other big story I think that we've been talking about is, of course, the idea that France was playing footsie with China and was and by the way, a misreading of the actual words said by Macron, which was, we're not supporting Ukraine and supporting their independence and stuff because the US is telling us to. Europe makes its own decisions for how it's going to behave, and we're not a puppet, is effectively what he was saying to the Chinese government. A lot of people took that as, we may go our own way on this or decide to go a different way than America because America is supporting the Ukrainians, so there might be an option for us. That's not at all what was said. And what's weird is the only people who seemed to believe it on the diplomatic level were the Chinese, where I guess the ambassador to Crimea, the Chinese ambassador to
The
France.
Chinese ambassador to Paris.
Yes, he apparently thought it meant what the English translation and a bunch of the other kind of semi-pro Russia crowd said, that France was backing away from its support of Ukraine and backing away from its support of the United States, when that wasn't the case at all. And so he opened his mouth and blabbed and said, none of the former Soviet nations are recognized universally, by the international community as countries, which is garbage, by the way. It's like repeated situations where, all of our NATO allies, the EU, everybody, they recognize that Ukraine is its own country, has multiple times. But the idea is that they were never in on it, because why would they be? Back in, 1998, they had bigger fish to fry. The Chinese were never part of that recognition. So their argument is that none of these countries really exist. And if Russia wants them back, it's kind of like us wanting, Taiwan back. It's exactly the same. And that set off a firestorm across all of the former Soviet satellite states, because the idea was like, we'll help Russia get you back to being puppets of them, if not totally under their control, especially as China's been trying to make deals with Kazakhstan and Dagestan and Georgia and all these countries. It's a really stupid thing to say, and the timing was horrible. So that said, my curiosity is what's the feeling in Ukraine right now as far as world support for what's going on, and is it really like, we know the tanks are coming, so we're just waiting, or we know the offensive's coming, so we're just waiting, and the rest of this stuff is just blather?
Well, you're asking me that question the day after the Ramstein summit at Ramstein Air Force Base in Germany, where the defense ministers of pretty much everybody in NATO was there, and sidebar communications were going on with international representatives nonstop. It's huge. I get the impression from people that I am in communication with here in Ukraine that they still very much feel and appreciate the international support that they've been getting. So this China France thing, it's something in the news cycle that will come and go. France is not going to abandon Ukraine. The European Union might have an agenda that maybe Kiev will have to work out with Brussels. Individual nation states within the EU, they might have to negotiate and talk about. I mean, Hungary has its own kind of thing going on with Orban. Of course, the Baltic states and Germany has its interests, and the UK and all the rest of it. But at the end of the day, I think Ukrainians do know that the world by and large supports them because they can see what Russia is up to. It's despite all the conspiracy theories and the protestations coming out of Moscow, um, the world doesn't support, but the
Mhm.
vast majority of the world does not support what Russia has done,
Right.
and they can say what they want, but the support is still there.
Yep. We're going to take a break. When we come back, I asked the question that I think everybody's wondering: what happens if Russia runs out of vodka?
Oh my.
That's a real thing. We'll be back right after this. It's the Hal Sparks Radio program, Mega Worldwide. Now with 100% more Johnny Million. It's Johnny Million on YouTube and Twitch, and of course, just Hal Sparks, just me.
And on this show.
Yeah, that's right.
That's why people know who I am.
That's true. There you go. I know I'm only on one day a week. I get it. I'm gonna have to jump on GarageBand and start sawing something together. This is the Hal Sparks Show. Wow, and a guitar note, and then progressive, and all. Yeah, it's gonna be good.
Hey, Hal, did you mean something like this?
This is the Hal Sparks Show. Wow, and a guitar note, and then progressive, and all. Yeah, it's gonna be good.
The Hal Sparks Radio program, Mega Worldwide.
Yeah, it's gonna be good. All right, as a teetotaler, I will have to defer to you two gentlemen in terms of this appeal of this substance known as alcohol and its myriad of forms. That I am baffled by even having a little of it. It makes no sense to me. But I understand that there are people in this world that consume lots of it that aren't Irish. And apparently those people are Russian. And it is so heavy an aspect of their consumption that they're in danger of running out at this point because of the war, and that the leadership is consuming so much vodka during the day that they are all effectively blinding drunk every night. Like it's like Michael Jackson and his anesthesiologist. They just chemical themselves to sleep because I guess they can find no other way. I mean, if I was Putin, the only way I could get to sleep is if I was knocked out, because I'd be so paranoid that somebody would try to snuff me. And the only thing I would trust is the same bottle everybody else is drinking from, I guess. You wouldn't trust somebody to give you a shot, like Elvis or Hitler. What happens when that happens, Philip Ittner? What happens when they run out of alcohol? What's the DTs like in Russia?
They'll never run out of alcohol. They will find ways. They will. I mean, there were stories in the worst era of the kind of collapsing period of the Soviet Union where there were stories about people like drinking antifreeze and like distilling antifreeze so that they could get the alcohol from it.
There was a prison wine.
Yeah, well, yeah. There was a famous anti-drinking campaign during, I believe it was the Brezhnev era, with a very famous poster with a guy refusing with his hand stretched out, refusing a shot of vodka. There are those who posit that the collapse of the Soviet Union was because they tried to control alcohol consumption. You could only be allotted a certain amount of vodka in any given day. Alcoholism is rampant in Russia. A lot, not just Russia. I mean, it's bad here too in Ukraine. It's a thing,
right?
There's stuff called samagon in Russia, which is just basically anything that has a sugar in it that you can
ferment
into alcohol. They'll do it.
Yeah.
It's like moonshine.
Right.
Yeah, it's like moonshine. It's basically moonshine. They're going to keep drinking because it's intrinsic to so much of their culture. It's not. They're never going to run out because it's just so much a part of their life. And,
I know I'm a dick for doing it.
They go 180 degrees the other direction, and they refuse any kind of alcohol whatsoever. But by and large, I mean, you start drinking at like in the morning and you drink all day, and
See,
that's why their
I
mortality
think
rate for men is like 51.
we
52.
may have discovered one of the reasons why Russian society, industry, and everything, other than digging stuff out of the ground and selling it on the open market, has collapsed for the most part in Russia. I'm gonna say it's probably that. I'm just gonna, not to be too much of a, an old like school marm from the 20s, but on a personal note, I'm like, maybe, I don't know, maybe dial it back. That you might find that life is worth living if you're not anesthetized against it at all times. That I just found that kind of amazing that was one of the big concerns that was coming out of the TASS agency, that they were literally talking about depleted. Think about that in a time of war. We've been talking about the United States like we're going to run out of ammunition because we're giving it all to Ukraine. That's the story that everybody's telling, which we're absolutely not, by the way. But that's the big story. What does it say about your society when your news service is saying we might run out of liquor? I just find that amazing.
You cannot buy alcohol in the Donbass. In Ukrainian-held Donbass, you cannot buy alcohol. And they do that for a reason. At the beginning of the
To
war,
promote
when I was
looting?
in Lviv, there were heavy restrictions on. Well, I mean, there was a prohibition in the beginning months of sale of alcohol. Now, of course, there was a black market if you really wanted to get your hands on it.
Right.
But the Ukrainians are smart enough to know that maybe at a time of war when we're being, bombed and all the rest of it, we shouldn't be letting people buy vast amounts of vodka. So it's a problem here as well. It's not just Russia. There's a whole heavy drinking culture and
Right.
it's you see it on the streets in Kiev. Guys who are just today. I took a nice little stroll around town. I saw some really interesting things. It gave me some. I posted a photograph. They repaved the main town here, the main street here in Kiev. That was neat to see.
Mm-hmm.
You don't do that if you're on the verge of defeat. That's a positive, forward-looking idea to repave your streets. But as I was walking around on a nice, lovely, sunny, one of the first sunny days of spring, there were guys out there drinking bottles, just openly, bottles of straight vodka, just sitting around. It's not just in Russia. I would not be terribly surprised if it's
I
worse
thought you were about
in
to say
Russia.
it's not just for breakfast anymore.
Well, it is though. That's the problem.
Who doesn't love vodka in their or vodka in their cornflakes?
Jesus.
But it is a real serious problem. Not but as I was going to say, I think it might be getting worse in Russia because they know that things are not going their way and things are things look grim. So
well, there
yeah.
So one of the other stories, and this kind of relates to people who see double, is that apparently during Vladimir Putin's visit to Mariupol, he stopped by Melania Trump's plastic surgeon apparently and became a completely different person. I don't know if you recall the multiple Melanias storyline that was out for a little while, which I think there's reason to believe that that's true. But there was a series of people online and whatever the Build whatever which is a website news service or whatever. Built, yeah. They went through and all the pictures and video of him there, and basically pointed out it's a different guy. It's completely a different guy. And I mean, I don't necessarily. I wouldn't go anywhere if I was him. Yeah. Right. Especially someplace like that. You're going to save your trips for meeting with Xi Jinping and others. But the pictures that they bring out are pretty extraordinary. Like you look at both of them and you're like, yeah, it's not even close in some cases. The ears slant the wrong way, the chin's way bigger, the nose is wrong. Like it's, we see these kind of things on the web all the time because QAnon people think everybody's a clone. But in this particular case, he's known to use doubles, and he's this trip to Mariupol was I mean, you contrast that with the fact that Zelensky's going. Zelensky goes to these places, and Putin is sending doubles, and it's become a rather like normal aspect of the story around him.
Yeah, I've been reluctant in the past to give too much oxygen to this kind of discourse because, um, I mean, yeah, maybe, but it doesn't. I mean, ultimately it doesn't change an awful lot.
Right.
It does show his mentality. It does show his where his head is at. I mean, we are hearing so much more and more about how psychologically and mentally he might be in a really bad place. A lack of trust of anybody, paranoia,
again, alcoholism,
distances himself from everybody. if he's began, drinking again, he's never been a heavy drinker. He's not like Yeltsin. Pardon me, but that could be part of it. But he's not doing well.
Right.
And I do think at this point it's undeniable he does use doubles.
Yeah, that's I just found that to be a particularly a particularly funny story. Like we heard about Saddam Hussein.
It is nutty.
Yeah.
and it does look, if he wins Mariupol or if he sent a double to Mariupol, it kind of, the one thing it does actually do, and you're absolutely right to point that out, Al, the fact that Zelensky actually goes to places. I mean, Zelensky was in Bakhmut 48 hours before he was on the floor of Congress addressing, the U.S. Congress. That's gutsy. That is, that is a morale boost, and it also sends a signal. Whereas, if indeed 100% it is proven that Putin used the double to go to Mariupol, it shows that he doesn't feel as secure about visiting a place like Mariupol,
right?
Which was contested for months, has been subdued, I'll say, and there are a lot of Russians that have been brought in there to build a kind of a Potemkin village to show that, look, we're great when we conquer.
Yeah, you abduct all the locals and replace them with your people. It worked for the Han Chinese, in China throughout the entire western part of the country, and then even in Tibet. We have to take a break. When we come back, I'm going to use the word no one should ever say. You're not even supposed to say it. And then, of course, I'm going to say it because that's how you always... You say you're not supposed to say something, and then you say it immediately afterward. That's how we work now. That's how life is. We'll be back with your questions too in the chat room for Philip and via Johnny Million. He will be farming them during the break. We'll be back.
You're listening to Hal Sparks' radio program, Mega Worldwide.
I thought there was going to be like a new one every break. I was so excited.
You want more, Hal? We'll give you more. Hal Sparks' radio program, Mega Worldwide on Chicago's Progressive Talk, WCPT 820. Hoo-yah!
Welcome back to the show. So we were just talking during the break about how when Trump makes that N-word reference, it just creeps us all out. It's just so gross. And I think the whole thing's predicated on Trump just wanting his audience to think one day he's just going to say it. And the reality is that there's a group of people in his audience that would cheer so loudly if he just said it. But then he dodges out and brings up nuclear power. And he brings up specifically nuclear weapons because that's for some reason he wants to pretend that he didn't, have this basically game between him and Kim Jong-un where they were threatening each other with buttons and little rocket man and blah, blah, blah. But, all of a sudden when it's another president in there, if another leader brings it up, suddenly it's our fault. It's just goofy. But in the process, one of the reasons why we're in this mess and why Russia's been able to finance itself for a very long time is because of the oil and gas industry providing energy for most of Europe. And a deal was struck by Energoatom, which is a Ukrainian state energy company, and Holtec International this week, which is they have a British office, but they are centered in Camden, New Jersey, of all places, to build 20 nuclear reactors inside Ukraine over the next, I guess, decade. Also elsewhere, probably not all 20 of them are going there. Probably 10 of them, and then a few others in areas that Ukraine will partner in the building of them, because once we get good at building these things, we can build one in France, is the theory, I think, for both energy groups. But this single act, as much as people like bristle at nuclear power, and if you look at what the Swedes and Norwegians have done with their nuclear power, they're pretty good at getting rid of their waste by burrowing down into the earth so far that there's way nastier stuff than nuclear waste below them. Far enough down where you can put the spent stuff down there. These will be built, in theory, on the same general principle. But 20 of them, this will replace the entire energy needs of Europe that they were getting from Europe, perhaps part of even what they're getting from Norway and Finland as well, are drawn from there. This is basically, Ukraine turns into an energy farm if this, it happens. Phase 1 has been signed off by the State Department. They have okayed it. 20 SMR 160 nuclear reactors. That's the biggest group of nuclear reactors built in, since, ever, I think, but certainly the largest number since they started building them 50, 60 years ago.
Mm-hmm. There's a lot to unpack with this, and not so. Ukraine has a muddled history with nuclear power, given that this is the territory where one of the world's worst nuclear accidents happened in Chernobyl. That is very much still living memory here in Ukraine. The fact that one of Europe's single largest reactor is here in Zaporozhye.
Yep.
But then also there are very sophisticated, intelligent nuclear power technicians here who know what they're doing. There is potentially the desire to move away from Soviet model nuclear reactors to more modern reactors. And then of course there's the European question of energy and their energy their energy needs, and their whole history of nuclear power, where one country would abolish using nuclear power stations, but they would be on the grid with a neighboring country that does have nuclear power. So are you really not engaging in nuclear power? That may be the case here with 22 of these plants. But at the end of the day, what also is important to recognize is that this is a clear indication that everybody is recognizing that the future of Ukraine lies in Europe, not part of the Russian power sphere. This is that Europe and Ukraine, as was stated yesterday at the Ramstein meeting. Everybody's looking at the fact that eventually, when this war is over, whatever it's going to look like, that there will be a nation state called Ukraine that will be part of Europe. It will not be tied to Russia. It will have its own identity. It will have its own, self-determination and its own place on the world stage. And it won't be just like Russia light, which is kind of what everybody used to think about when it came to Ukraine. It will have its own identity. That's what I take away when I think about the prospect of that. Other things as well. But
right. There's I
think it's important.
Right. There's one of the biggest actions we can possibly do in the world for decarbonization and getting away from fossil fuels that doesn't involve the deaths of hundreds of thousands, if not millions, if not billions of people, is nuclear power. There is no other way around it in the needs of the modern world. Period. End of story. The only way we're going to solve this is to innovate our way out of it. And in terms of the energy needs, as far as damage versus benefit, if we're going to overtake the amount of carbon we're putting into the environment, period, end of story. As the developing world, electrifies itself, as India electrifies itself, as China electrifies itself, to balance out the use of coal and other fossil fuels in those countries, which short of bombing them, we are not going to stop them from doing. Nuclear power is the only way to do it. And I was shocked by the directness of this around that plan, where they were like, yep, we're serious about decarbonization. This is going to replace that energy source, effectively nullifying the worth of Russia as a country, as an energy producer for all of Europe for all time. And
Yeah, and then hopefully we can just they can we can't ignore them, but we
no.
can certainly get to a place where we say you do your own thing, you figure it out, and when you're ready to be a member of the global community, then we'll reassess. I mean, I've seen there's been a huge Twitter storm, and I don't want to talk about Twitter, but this was a huge Twitter storm between Mike McFaul responding
Sure.
to Sergei Lavrov. Lavrov has made this comment saying, well, obviously the Americans are coming here to destroy us. And McFaul's response was like, man, if you didn't do things like invading Ukraine, we would leave you to your own devices. Nobody wants.
Nobody cares.
Nobody. Nobody wants. Yeah, we don't, and that ticks them off no end. It's not the idea that people are coming to get them; it's that they can be ignored.
Yeah.
And if we get to a point where the Europeans are not addicted to Russian gas and oil, then we might be able to get to a point and be like, you just do what you want, man. Just do it on your side of the border.
It is
Don't
amazing.
mess with anybody else, and you work it out yourself.
Well, I would argue,
but that ticks them off. That ticks them off because how dare you ignore us? I mean that's what Lavrov's thing was, and McFaul's thing was. Like,
I want to grab some questions.
Lavrov saying, you want to get us? And McFaul saying, actually, no, we'd ignore you if we could.
I want to get to some questions, but I would argue that Russia is basically the world's school shooter in a lot of ways. It's a workplace shooter, and these actions are an action of ego. Some people will blame the kind of like mass violence we see in the United States on quote unquote mental health in the abstract. And we can debate about whether, narcissism, like malignant narcissism is a mental health issue, is a characteristic of a person's ethic or a mental disease at some other time. I would argue, though, that both, for this to be true, it either works in that it is all about I will not be ignored. My right to be outraged and angry and seen and honored and revered or feared is more important than your right to live. And there's a lot of similarities in the worst kind of sort of suicide or suicide bomb kind of reactions that you see from people as well. It's based in the same ego. People will say it's their religion. People will say it's their government system. It's a myriad of other things. But in reality, when it comes down to it and the single person is making the decision, it is because they believe they deserve a bigger slice of the pie than they have worked to actually earn on a major scale, and they're too lazy to try. And so in the case of, Putin and that ilk, I honestly think they have more in common with workplace shooters in their decision-making process than they do with, Genghis Khan claiming land again.
We don't have the time, especially with the questions, because I love getting questions. We don't have the time to go into it in detail, but as someone who lived there and has studied Russia for the past 3 decades, a huge problem with Russia's diplomatic efforts and its sense of self and what it does and its motivations is built on an inferiority complex. It's very difficult to get into. It's very complex. And if you want to talk about it another time, that I'd love to. But just know that there's a huge inferiority complex when it comes to Russia, because they always juxtapose themselves. They always judge themselves on others, and it's like,
it's the politics
on what you do.
It's the politics of incels. Let's grab a question if we can, because I'll eat up the time in the conversation.
The first question is undeniable. Everybody wants to hear about the new painting behind Phil, and some people want him to straighten it a bit.
It is a little.
It's not the painting. It's my camera. So this is a painting. A painting by my favorite Russian Ukrainian. He was born in Kharkiv, outside of Kharkiv. A guy by the name of Ilya Repin. He painted in the mid 19th century. I've had for many months the painting of the death of the Tsarevich and Ivan the Terrible. This is called the barge pullers on the river Volga, and it is, to me, a perfect depiction of a very serious problem within Russia, and one of the reasons why Ukraine will never again live this kind of lifestyle, because it shows the masses. They're pulling the barge, which is the Russian ship of state, with the elites over there on the nice, clean, crispy barge there with the Russian flag, and then you have these dirty, impoverished, guys who are just pulling it up the river with a strap. The Russians know this is part of, and maybe I can tie this into the inferiority complex a little bit, because the Russians are aware of their own inadequacies. They are aware of how their state doesn't work properly unless it is despotic. If you put enough vodka into them, or if you get to be friends with them enough, and they get to a point where they feel that they can trust you, they themselves will tell you the problem. I mean, Ripon is showing it right here. He's showing exactly why the Ukrainians refuse to live under the thumb of Moscow, and the Russians know it themselves, and they're just. I'm going to say something controversial, but I'm going to stand by it. They're too darn lazy to change what they know the changes that need to be done. They know exactly what.
We're nihilists, Lebowski. We believe in nothing. Let's take a break, and we'll come back with more questions. It's the House Parks Radio program, Mega Worldwide.
You are happy, let us be happy together, whether the weather is cloudy or sunny. I will always be your funny honey bunny. I am lucky, you are lucky, let us get lucky together, whether the weather is cloudy or breezy.
He's dancing.
I'll be there to say,
knock his phone off.
Let's take it easy. Because isn't it nice to have the friends that you do? And isn't it nice that the sky is so blue? And isn't it nice to say I love you, chugga chugga choo choo, woo woo. I am smiling, you are smiling, let us smile together, whether the weather is cloudy or stormy. I will still be there in the morning. I'll be right by your side in the morning. I'll make you breakfast in the morning. I hope that you like cereal.
Yay!
Well, I do have some good news. It's bad news for Republicans, but it's good news for citizens of all stripes. A dozen U.S. states hit record low unemployment forever last month. Under the presidency of Joe Biden. And interestingly enough, in terms of the states that you're going to try and gin up some anti-federal government angst for yourself, it's difficult. One of them is Arizona, obviously, because Arizona, with its 9 new chip factories, you're welcome, is a major player. But Montana, South Dakota, Wisconsin, Arkansas, Mississippi, Alabama, Ohio, Kentucky, West Virginia, and Maine, as well as I think Rhode Island, Rhode Island. All of them. No, wait, all reached a level of unemployment never seen before. I think South Dakota, Nebraska, and North Dakota, their rate is 2%. And in states like Wisconsin, which hit 3% for the first time ever. Florida's at 3% as well, but it had already hit that years ago. It's been around that back. By the way, the reason Florida has a way lower one was because my grandfather was responsible partly for bringing soldiers home after World War II and relocating them and letting them settle for a bit, get the help they need. Some of them needed mental counseling, and some of them needed physical therapy, and some of them just didn't have a place to live after they came back. So they went to these apartments that the government set up in Florida, and some of them just stayed, but they all had jobs while they were there. So there's a period where, like post World War II, and into the 60s, that's why Florida was this kind of pristine, easy living place, because there were a bunch of people down there that never had to pay any rent and were good people who worked very hard and were respected by their neighbors. So it was a nice mix of humans, and Florida benefited from that. And I think they had a 1.5% unemployment at that point. It was like minuscule. It was crazy. Anyways, that's really good news. If you are running on a prosperity and peace concept as far as the Biden administration.
And we are, we got another year and a half, roughly, before the elections, and those things are only going to get stronger and stronger.
That's right.
In my estimation. My story, I'm torn about my story between three. And I think I know the one, but I'm going to mention that there's a great video that's trending of Ukrainian soldiers on the front lines. They had a band showed up, and they did a dance party on the front lines, which, is kind of like, if you guys are facing, if they really think that they're imminent defeat or whatever, you don't have dance parties on the front line. The other one is, I'm about to put out a vlog about a really interesting guy who's lived in LA, learned how to do sushi and ramen, and then he came back to Ukraine, started a chain of restaurants. He's extremely successful. War started. He took his stills, and he's feeding Ukrainian soldiers. So look for that vlog on my channel soon. But I think the story that really stands out to me, and it's not a happy ending story in the way of a humorous happy ending, but it is, I think, gives an insight into this whole dispute about the various Orthodox churches here and who holds allegiance to whom. There was a transfer that was initiated between Ukraine and Russia, in which a single Ukrainian Orthodox church member, now that's the church in Ukraine that is still beholden to the system in Moscow, a single priest was swapped for 28 soldiers.
Whoa.
So the argument that the Ukrainian Orthodox Church is some sort of independent body and not beholden to Moscow kind of goes out the window.
Yeah. You don't trade that's a Victor Boot like trade.
Yeah.
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 I mean, again.
Worse. Far worse.
Yes. So
I was happy to see Griner go, even though I had my issues with Boot. This is a clear indication that Moscow values this one priest.
Yeah, I meant scale-wise. Yeah.
Why that might be.
Yeah, I just meant on the scale of it. Like, if that's the kind of person you are willing to trade that much for, that says a lot.
Exactly.
And I don't know if Johnny Million, other than he has twitch.tv/itsjohnny and youtube.com/itsjohnny. I think that's right. Am I right?
That's right. Yeah, those are good ones.
Yeah. So other than that, that's a pretty happy ending. And he got to go see King's X last week, and Ty Tabor yelled at him from the stage and said, "That's Johnny Million," and that's a really beauful thing. And because we love us some King's X.
And then I got to chat with him forever.
It's a great thing. They're good people. I've had lovely
big fans. You have no idea. Ty could not stop singing your praises.
Oh, he like that dude. The magic that is in his fingers. I feel like we just need to, if we could set up some sort of a generator off of it, we could spread peace and music throughout the entire world. I honestly believe that. He means so well, and he plays so well in the same human being. That's an amazing. Those are two amazing characteristics to have in a being, and that's why I like him so much. I like, you know how close I am with Doug, and I love Doug. And Jerry as a drummer. For those of you that aren't King's X fans, I don't know what's broken in your head, and I hope it heals.
Yeah, you should be already.
Yeah, and Jerry's just way of playing the drums has just always been gorgeous to me, as well as sort of perfect timing.
YouTube,
and soul.
like their performance of Dogman on the Jon Stewart show.
Yes, good Lord,
holy moly!
Yes,
probably one of the best late night performances ever.
Yes, agreed. And just love him across the board. But the thing about Ty is, as a human being, is that he means well by the earth. And I genuinely mean that. Not in somebody who's just, somebody who pats themselves on the back for being, a slacktivist or any of those people who's like really voices some sort of idea, but he actually is that feeling, if that makes sense. Yeah, and it shows in his music, and I think it's beautiful. Also, by the way, I will say that
you still need to check out Ted Lasso, Hal.
I know. I would argue
that so wonderful.
Yes, I've heard good things, but
such a good show.
I'll get it there at some point.
It's so positive, such a great thing.
Johnny, do you
Less
have
cynicism, more positivity?
That's right. Hey, that's what I'm here for. Optimistic stoicism, baby. This is what we do here. Come on
Well,
now.
there's a quote that's very important in Ted Lasso, and I'm going to try and remember it here. Be curious, not judgmental.
Yeah.
Mhm. Yep. Yeah. So Jesus said something along those lines. It was a little more direct, but I get you. At some point,
Question?
Is Ted Lasso going to walk on water at the end of the final episode, like being there?
Yeah.
Oh, sorry. I know you know what.
That's great. Yeah. I think that would be really
I
funny
wish.
if there was a being there ending for Ted Lasso. It would drive everyone crazy, but I think it'd be a
that'd
great
be
thing.
awful.
It would be, yeah. Okay. And also, by the way, along with those horrible jobs numbers I told you about earlier, where a bunch of red states are doing better than they thought they would and setting record low unemployment, wages have also increased, and earnings. This is from Bloomberg. Better than feared earnings has analysts rethinking projections. This just tells you how Wall Street usually reacts to things. Like it's great unless it's terrible. Roughly 20% of the S&P 500 is reported, and 77% of them topped estimates. And yeah, and everybody's arguing where their estimates that they were predicting too low. Like it's really hard to sell that America's going down the toilet the way Trump wants to when that's the genuine news. When in Montana they have a record low unemployment for the first time in their history, and it's not because a bunch of people left the state. It's for real. And it's not, and those are mostly energy jobs and agricultural jobs, and everybody's working double shifts. It's just going to be a hard sell in about a year. It really is. They're not going to, it's all going to be social stuff. It's all going to be like they're trying to trans our kids. That's all they're going to have left. It's basically all they have right now, which is why you hear so much about it. And in its own way, but for the fact that trans people have to hear this crap all the time, it's good news for the country overall, because when your enemy only has that to go on, and it's so feather light and weak and stupid and gross, you are not getting to the heartland issues. These are not kitchen table issues. And I think the same thing goes with as Ukraine plays out over the next 4 months. The next 4 months are going to be pivotal. So tune in every Saturday. Yeah. Philip will be joining us and keeping us up to date on that. And then on Wednesdays, we'll have a midweek pick-me-up when he's available and he's not on the road or in some undisclosed location. And, of course, you can always see my live stream on infotainmentwars.com or at twitch.tv/HalSparks or on the Facebook page. Like, subscribe, support us via the Patreon page, patreon.com/HalSparks. And then what else? Thumbs up on your way out the door. And we will see you guys on Monday.
Thanks
you,
very
everybody.
Much. Thank you, Chicago.
Peace. There we go. Super. Yeah. So thanks so much. And I guess
Thanks, anybody got to rush off, or should we do a question or two?
Do you have another? I think we got a couple of questions.
I got time. It's 9 o'clock in the evening here. I've already eaten, so.
I got a
couple questions here from Nick Rich. What Ukrainian exports can we put on our shopping list to help support Ukraine?
Really good question. I mean, if you're a drinking man, get some Ukrainian Gorelka. There's even like exclusive lines where they have like, St. Javelin for the anti-tank weapon, and there's a Cossack holding a javelin. If you are a guy who likes to look sharp, you get yourself a Vishivanka, which is the traditional. These gentlemen both have one. Mm-hmm. It's a really good look. Go, get online. Vishivanka.
There is a. I want to see if this is.
Get yourself some pickles.
All right.
No, seriously though, what could you do if you wanted to buy something?
Well, one of the things you could do is on Amazon,
I think of food stuff or something cultural. That would be my bet.
Yes, on Amazon, you can literally type in all Ukrainian products, and it will show you stuff, including Vishivankas and kitchen aprons that look like Vishivankas, and Rushnik.
If you're a musician, and you want to tackle a very difficult instrument, you can get
Mhm.
yourself a bandera, which is
Mhm.
like a cross between a guitar and a harp, and
Mhm.
it is a beautiful sound. But
Mhm.
as not a musician myself, but I can imagine very difficult to tackle. But boy, is it a pretty sound and an impressive
Mhm.
instrument, a bandera. Not Stepan Bandura,
Right.
not Stepan Bandera, a Bandura. So beautiful stuff. Go get some. I'll tell you what. Go buy some music. There's
Mhm.
beautiful music that comes out of Ukraine.
Yep.
Go to a Ukrainian music festival. They're being conducted all around the world, and they're being conducted to raise money. So have a nice evening out. Learn a little bit of Ukrainian culture. Buy
There's a
yourself a Ukrainian book. Get some Taras Shevchenko in your life.
there's a
I don't know.
Ukrainian
There's tons of
trident
stuff, but
wooden beer
by all
stein on right now on there's a Ukrainian wooden beer stein, for real wooden, with a metal cup in the center of it so it'll last, with the trident on it, the Ukrainian trident on it, that is made in Dnipro. And
Yep.
it's like available
I've got one right here. These are great. And every city makes them. Every city makes them. This is from Lviv.
Mm-hmm.
But you can get them, from pretty much every major city in Ukraine.
I would only
tankard.
Yeah, only
Those
thing
are
I
great
would
fun.
say is that when you get stuff, you can check the country of origin on them, so that you aren't buying stuff that like Russians are sniping cash by selling, in the same way that the Colonel Tom Parker sold "I Hate Elvis" buttons, in the same way, where you get both sides of the market to finance yourself. Yeah, but
like
so
the
I'm
people
just
who hate watch you.
Yep, exactly. Which, by the way, thanks,
Mhm.
trolls. Hi, trolls. Hello, good to see you. Welcome. Sorry your entire world is collapsing. I wish you better days. I hope one day you find your happiness. You're miserable by your own making. I don't get it, but do your thing. You do you, boo. We're not here to yuck your yum. Okay, let's grab another question and then we'll head out.
All right, hang on a second. Got one from Karma Raven. Did Phil hear that Tucker had Kennedy on? Kennedy seems like a tanky.
Oh, Robert F. Kennedy Jr. Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, that whole thing. Yeah, he's huge anti-Ukrainian. I had heard that had happened. I didn't watch it because I don't have time for that.
Mm-hmm. Well, it's like that. It's the same reason he has on Marianne Williamson.
One quick more one.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, no, the same reason he has on, Jackson
Jimmy
Hinkle.
Dore. Right.
Who is a child. He's never stepped foot out of the country. He's never been to Russia or Ukraine, and he pontificates. No, it's giving oxygen to stupidity. So no, I don't engage, or I try not to. One more quick one.
Yeah, let's grab another
one.
one.
More quick one from Elizabeth. They would like to know how the situation in Georgia and neighboring countries is going, kind of generally.
Oh boy, not enough time. Not great. Georgia has stifled dissent. They have imprisoned Mikhail Saakashvili. It looks like they're going to kill him, which is sad. Misha had a lot of issues during his presidency. He is not a perfect human being by any stretch of the imagination. I've met the man several times. I do sincerely believe his intentions were good, and he certainly doesn't deserve to die in a Georgian prison influenced by Russia. Armenia and Azerbaijan tensions are being exacerbated by a vacuum of power from Moscow, and so it looks like the Nagorno-Karabakh is going to kick off again, or has already kicked off again. It looks like it might get worse. The Caucasus are troubled. I mean, and a lot of it's all tied together because it's all Black Sea power. But I truly love the Caucasus. They are some of the most beautiful, breathtaking mountain ranges. The people there are lovely. Georgian food. Oh, I mean, as much as I love Ukrainian food, Georgian food is an an undiscovered cuisine. That
As a
is just
Caucasian, I appreciate
magnificent.
that. I would just like to say for the record.
Yes, not Atlanta, Georgia, but Tbilisi, Georgia.
Yes,
as much as I
but
respect,
still, the
you know.
namesake of my lineage of skin tone, and yours and Johnny's, comes from those mountain ranges.
Yeah, no, with Georgian food is delicious. If you have a Georgian restaurant in your area, go check it out. You will not be disappointed. It's delicious.
Excellent.
But anyhow, I don't want to keep either of you here
love that.
too long.
Yep,
you
we'll
got
see you
stuff
on
to do.
Wednesday.